Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Roundtable.
For millions, the daily trek is a draining puzzle of schedules and traffic jams. Now, though, China is weaving suburban rail, subways, bikes, and roads into a smarter web across its megacities. If the grind shrinks, so to speak, people might reclaim more than just minutes. And when cities feel closer without moving an inch at all, the way we live and connect could adjust in unexpected ways. Live from our studios here in Beijing, this is Roundtable. I'm Steve Hatherley. Thanks for being with us today. And for the show, I'm with Yushan and Yushun. First up, for millions of people, commuting isn't just getting from point A to point B. It's a daily calculation of time, transfers, traffic, and energy. Now, though, in China, the country is rolling out a new plan aimed at making cross-city travel faster and smoother across major urban regions, not through one big project alone, but by connecting buses and rail and metro systems and roads and parking and even bicycles into a more coordinated network. If commuting becomes easier, could people gain back more than just time? Other parts of their lives will be affected as well, and we're going to talk about that. Yushan and Yushan, how you doing today? It's good to see you. How long? Let's start with this. How long is your commute to work?
I'm lucky enough to live near our office, so it's around 10 minutes of bicycle.
Beautiful.
I've had a long history of trying to shorten my commute. So previously...
A long history of trying to shorten it.
Exactly. Previously, it used to be about a little over an hour for just traveling on a bicycle plus subway. And then I managed to shorten it to within 40 minutes by driving.
Very good.
And then I cannot endure even that anymore, so I moved somewhere closer within 3 kilometers with our office, and now it's only like 10 to 15 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Well, time is relative, isn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah, so you get used to the 1 hour, but then that feels long. Then you're super excited about 40 minutes, but then that starts to feel long.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You've accomplished your
Thank you.
goal, by the way. All right, well, let's talk about commuting. Here in China, of course. What is the current situation? Let's take a look at some numbers. Actually, we have a whole lot of numbers to share.
Yeah, it's actually a huge map when you're looking at each city's transportation network. And China's urban rail system now stretches about 11,000 kilometers, the largest network in the world, while the total length of urban bus routes across the country totals 1.75 million kilometers. And also, there are some really big stats that is showing that commuting distance has become shorter in recent years. The China Academy of Urban Planning and Design released a report on 45 major cities across the country covered by rail transit in the beginning of 2026. Over half of urban residents nationwide enjoy a more pleasant commuting experience, relatively, I would say, defined as commutes of 5 kilometers or less. This metric,
It's pretty good.
Makes
reflects kind of close proximity between jobs and also housing and the feasibility of walking or cycling to work. And 52% of commutes fall within this range.
52% of people commuting around the country can do so within 5 kilometers of their workplace. That's really good.
Yeah, indeed. And also the number is backing this up too. So in China's megacities, the average distance between home and work is now 4.5 kilometers, while in super large cities, we'll kind of get to the differentiations between these two in just a bit. In super large cities, it's even shorter at 3.9 kilometers. Even more encouraging is the fact that in 2024, 32 of China's 45 major cities saw no further increase in the gap between where people live and where they work. So among them, 26 remained stable, while 6 actually recorded an year-on-year improvement, meaning that more and more cities across China are trying to work hard to reduce their office workers' commute time, as a matter of fact.
They call that jobs housing separation. That's the term they use when they're talking about where people live and where they work and how long it is between the two. You said super large cities versus, what was the other term you used there?
The megacities.
What's the difference?
Yeah, well, for super large cities, they are those that have more than 10 million permanent urban residents. So the cities will falling into this category will include Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, even Chongqing and Chengdu. While megacities, they have between 5 and 10 million. So that involves Harbin, Shenyang, Xi'an, and Hangzhou. So we might sometimes misuse these two terms, but actually there's a little bit of difference there.
I was thinking about these numbers, 4.45 kilometers in megacities and 3.9 kilometers in super large cities. The super large cities even shorter. So I was thinking because people living in these kind of cities, they're mostly, I think, a lot of people, they rent a house. And that's why they kind of have more flexibility on choosing the location that they can live. So that's why maybe in even larger cities, people can choose to live closer to their like workplace or something. But for a super large city like Beijing, where we're in my own experience, most people spend at least, I think, 50 minutes to around 1 hour for one-way commuting each way.
That's the job housing separation.
Right.
And I think that's also generally considered a kind of average. We will get into another like number in later, and that number is kind of, I think, acceptable for people who living in Beijing, that 50-minute to 1 hour commute.
Well, a lot of people around the country are on the move every single day. There is data from China's Ministry of Transport. According to the Ministry of Transport, around 100 million people take rail transit to get where they need to go each day. Another 100 million rely on buses to move through the cities. Another 100 million use taxis or ride-hailing services, I guess a car, in some way, shape, or form. And those riders or people using those services would be looking for more direct door-to-door travel or commute. 4 million people commute across city boundaries each day. And this, to me, is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. In 22 of China's mega and super large cities, the 4 million people cross boundaries there, and that accounts for about 4% of all commuters in these cities. So those would be people who live outside the city and then travel into the city for work.
Yes. One example I think is very close to us. A lot of people live in Hebei, which is the province next to Beijing, and then they're actually working in Beijing. So sometimes they will, normally they will commute from Hebei to Beijing, and there is a kind of mature commuting and transportation system for them to make them work smoothly within, I think, around 2 hours.
Yeah, and around, if not a decade ago, I think there's been a time when buying a house in Tianjin, which is the municipality right next to Beijing, was so popular among not only Beijingers, but also whoever works in Beijing, saying that, the house is so affordable. And that was about the time when high-speed rail was connecting Beijing with Tianjin within only half an hour.
Well, you say right next to Beijing, but it's still an hour and a half drive between the two cities, depending on where you are in Beijing, I suppose.
Again, if you take the high-speed train, it's only 30 minutes.
And that's my point. That's my point, though. So it's not exactly like right next door, but at the same time, with high-speed rail, it makes it feel like it's right next door, and it allows people to live in one of the cities and work in the others. All right, let's have a look at some more numbers here. The commuting times, I'm curious to know. Yushan, you said roughly around 45, 50 minutes. That's kind of a common number to hear.
Yeah, 77% of commuters in major cities had a commute time of 45 minutes or less in 2024. And that's a little bit increased from 2020. And experts also explained why 45 minutes is very important. So Zhao Yixing, director of the Urban Transport Research Center, also added that in mega and super large cities, having 80% of commuters able to reach their destination within 45 minutes is a sign of high urban efficiency and quality of life.
So that's kind of the cutoff number then.
Yes.
Yeah, anything under 45 minutes is considered a success, so to speak. All right, so if we look at some specific cities and find out how far people are traveling, or at least in terms of time, to get to work, we'll find some varying numbers or some similar numbers, or maybe a little bit of A and a little bit of B. Let's start in Shenzhen, since that's one of the bigger cities in the country.
Yeah, lately there's a China Daily Report revealing that an impressive 81% of Shenzhen's commuters complete their one-way journey in under 45 minutes.
That magic number, 45 minutes.
Indeed, and that makes Shenzhen the first and only super large city in the country to exceed the 80% threshold, just to achieve that. And the average one-way commute in the city is about 33 minutes, covering an average distance about 7.9 kilometers. And this suggests a trend toward shorter travel times and a more compact urban spatial structure. So only about 11% of commuters spend more than 60 minutes on a single trip, and the lowest proportion among all megacities in China too. So Shenzhen is really doing a good job in shortening not only the commuting time, but also designing more of the smart roads and smart facilities along the road in order to even boost the efficiency of how people travel.
Now, I'm not a Beijing expert at all, but I have heard people complain that Beijing's commute time is among, if not the worst in the country.
But one of the, I think, longest commuting time.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by
country.
worst. Longest.
Yeah, actually, I also saw some official data from Beijing Transport Institute. It released in 2023. It's called the Annual Report on Beijing Commuting Patterns. It is analyzing residents' commuting habits throughout the year, and the report found that the average one-way commute within Beijing's central urban area was 51 minutes. Also, that's around 13.2 kilometers, with around 30% of commuters spending more than an hour traveling each day, and that is basically the highest in the country. So the average one-way commuting time is around 47 minutes, the longest, and the average commuting distance is around 12 kilometers as well. Also the longest in the country. So Beijing is topping in many ways.
Yeah.
When we're talking about
Unfortunately.
commuting.
From my experience, though, because I used to live on one side of the city and then on the other side of the city from our studios, and I only lived there for a short period of time, but it allowed me to experience the morning trains, and they're very, very busy. I took the train from around 7:30 in the morning, from around that time, and even then there are lineups to get onto the subways.
By train, do you mean subway trains?
By subway, yeah. Now, it's extremely busy in the downtown areas, but the good thing, the great thing was that the next train comes within, I don't know, I didn't time it, but it felt like 2 minutes.
Yeah, about
Yeah.
2.
Yeah, right?
It should be the average.
So it really kept the crowds moving. It kept the flow of commuters. It didn't feel stuck. It didn't feel like you were wasting any time was being wasted. But yes, Beijing, when compared to other cities, more arduous, so to speak.
Indeed. And there are
yeah.
other super large cities besides Beijing and Shenzhen that has also seen at least 70% of commuters complete their one-way journeys in less than 45 minutes in 2024. And that figure was at least 80% in 6 megacities and at least 70% in the rest 9 megacities. So here's a pattern here that's very interesting. Smaller cities with lower permanent residence population tended to have better performances. So this figure was 88% in Changzhou in eastern China's Jiangsu province and 91% in Wenzhou in eastern China's Zhejiang province. So the lowest was in Changchun, northeast China's Jilin province at only 74%. So meaning that the smaller scale the city has, the faster you are able to travel.
I wonder if that can be attributed to less competition for housing closer to workplaces?
So here I am the only one who lives in a smaller city here in China. So I kind of have the experience of the downtown area and my home. It is around 30-minute commute. But the thing is that I think that is or not a problem. That is the situation that we're having. That is the whole city is not that populated, and you don't have so many urban areas like Beijing, because you can treat Beijing as several spots as a city center. But in smaller cities, there is only one, probably the downtown area. So you can travel from every corner of the city to the downtown within around, I think, at least within 1 hour.
I looked it up in Canada because I was curious to know. The worst is Vancouver. The average commute time is about 60 minutes. And I found it amusing because the article, which was from a Canadian media outlet, was complaining about how long that was. And they said that's the equivalent to 1 year, 8 months spent riding transit during your lifetime. It's a bit dramatic, but okay, if the math adds up. Toronto is second worst at 55 minutes a day. And they asked Canadian transit riders about, what is it that needs to be fixed then if you're going to be fixing whatever the problem is with your long commute. And one of the things they said, actually, it was the number one answer in the survey at 29%, higher frequency of vehicles. And that was what I was talking about in Beijing. The morning trains come every couple of minutes and it keeps crowds moving, whereas apparently in Toronto and maybe Vancouver they would like to see a higher frequency of vehicles so that their standing around time is reduced in the morning.
So it's kind of inevitable for a lot of the metropolitans around the world that as cities develop and as megacities and super megacities like Beijing continues to expand over the years, it's necessary that we pay attention to the fact that commuting efficiency matters for day-to-day commuters, like office workers like us.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that then specifically. What are the new moves to make the commutes better in different cities around the country?
Yeah, that's where recently 8 departments, including China's Ministry of Transport, jointly released an implementation plan to improve intercity commuting efficiency in metropolitan circles from the year 2026 to 2030. You can consider that as another new, relatively newer 5-year plan here, rolled out here in China recently. So in order to make cross-city commuting smoother and reduce the number of painful transfers, the plan actually encouraged central cities and neighboring areas of metropolitan circles to coordinate cross-city bus service as a start. So measurements include adding better ticket discounts for those bus routes and compensation for operation, while introducing more flexible options like customized commuter buses and demand-responsive routes. So this is not brand new. Some cities in China, they've already practiced this out in the past few years. For example, in Shenzhen, we're always mentioning Shenzhen when it comes to high-tech and interesting designs citywide. So when Shenzhen first rolled out its Zhongshan Link, operated to traffic back in June 2024, that's a brand new cross-city bus service, began operating back then, connecting Shenzhen with nearby city of Zhongshan in Guangdong province.
Would that be an example of a demand-responsive route?
Yeah, and it helped so many people, as reported by one Guangming.com report, saying that day-to-day commuters like Mr. Wang, they interviewed this Mr. Wang, who lives in Zhongshan but needs to work in Shenzhen. And he used to book shared shuttle buses through a mobile app and spend about 50 yuan and around 6 hours commuting each day. And nowadays, as per in 2024, when the bus line first rolled out, thanks to that specific cross-city bus service, his daily commute has been cut off by half, and the transportation cost is reduced to around 18 to 28 yuan, which
Amazing.
is also cut by half.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how big of a difference it's making. So now China sees that this works. It's trying to expand the application of this.
Cut by half. We set this very quickly, but that is really significant for a commuter and daily,
6 hours.
because
Can you imagine that?
first of all, of course, we're mentioning these new plans that is, I think, taking into effect around 2026 to 2030. But I think the thing is that China has been, I think they're trying to improve the situation of commuting experience for so many years. First off, sharing bike is now one of the China's wonders now. People talk about it, but it is the first intention of having sharing bike is to solve the problem of that 1 to 3 kilometers between their home to the subway station.
It eliminates the need for the subway if the weather is cooperative.
Yes. And also, in Beijing, there are some certain, I think, incentives. For example, for the daily commuters, when you paid a certain amount of money for every month, and then at the last days, you will have a larger discount, which means that's around 50% off of your daily transit card.
Those city bicycles, by the way, those shared bicycles, when I first moved here, I just thought, oh, okay, that's cool. And I didn't really use them that much. I mean, they're literally everywhere. You go outside and you see them everywhere. You go to a shopping mall, you see them everywhere. You go to a subway station, they are lined up down the road. And I thought, when am I going to use these? And then slowly my wife and I started on the weekend go for a little bike ride. And now it's like, oh, don't feel like walking to the gym? Look outside. There's a shared bicycle. You open it up and you pay an extremely reasonable amount and you just take it and drop it off. I didn't realize how big an impact those would have on my life, which means for residents of Beijing and other cities here in the country, it's just become such a convenient, super ultra convenient way to eliminate, like you said, the last mile or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, even depending on where you're going.
Yeah, and more like metro lines is also building. I think just this year, one of my friends told me that the new line 17 in Beijing just helped them to cut the commute time like from 1 hour to around 20 minutes.
Oh,
That
really?
is a really big improvement. And not only these big cities, what I saw is policies are encouraging local government to optimize bus services by adjusting the schedules and capacity of first and last departures and short-term routes and night services. One example is in Qingdao in Shandong province. One bus route has extended its operating hours from peak periods only to 6:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., with the first bus departing 50 minutes earlier and the last one leaving 60 minutes later. So these extended time also offer people more options on having the bus to commute maybe earlier and also later.
Smarter roads are going to be contributing to the help too. How? Well, instead of reacting to congestion, they say that the roads in the future could monitor traffic conditions in real time using sensors and cameras and AI models. Now, that might not sound like so futuristic, right? Using cameras to have a look at traffic, okay. But here's what that system could do. It could predict bottlenecks and then adjust speed limits dynamically. So you'd have like a stock market style of a speed limit on a road that would go up and down depending on the number of cars on the road. It could open or close lanes when needed, which is kind of cool. And it could guide vehicles onto faster routes before the delays actually happen. So that's kind of a nifty peek into the future then. All right, well, sorry.
Yeah, in Hangzhou, I've already seen robots guiding cars go to different routes.
Wow.
Really?
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about cross-city commuting. It's become, or is it fair to say, it's become more popular for people to live in one city and then work in another? I would guess so, with the expansion of high-speed rail to where it is now. Then, since the convenience is there, I'm guessing more and more people are doing it.
Yeah, and it's indeed becoming more common here in China, and especially as far as I've researched, there are two main regions. One would be highly condensely integrated in the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, where living in Hong Kong and Macau, the SARs might be costing you more than living in Guangdong, nearby Guangdong province. So people will choose that as a result of balancing living cost and working efficiency. Well, as a strong central hub, we've already mentioned how Beijing also attracts a large number of daily commuters from surrounding areas. So that's, like I mentioned earlier, it's just jobs and housing. They're often concentrated in different places. People may work in a major city center where salaries and opportunities are stronger, but live in a nearby city or an external part of that city where housing is more affordable.
Sure.
So that's just natural. And just right before we come down here to do the show, I think, you were there too, right? Yushan Fei told us about how she used to live in far northern eastern side of Beijing while accepting, a phone call from other southern Daxing province in Beijing saying that, oh, you've passed the interview and we can offer you a job. And she's like, oh, but I live in far northern eastern side. And they're like, oh, then in that case, we probably will need to reconsider. And Feifei agrees, saying that, I think that would be the best for both of us. See how job opportunities are being leveraged because of where you live.
Yeah, 100%. So it makes sense that you get into the downtown concentrated areas and your housing gets more expensive. People are going to look outside a little further away, because if you have a well-developed transport system, then it doesn't matter as much, right? It doesn't matter so much. All right. So if we have this kind of well-developed city commute structure in place, then what does this mean for us ordinary citizens?
It gives people time, and it feels like the quality of time, because the shorter the commuting hour can be, I think the better quality that you will feel in your life. It's not like we're saying that, okay, the long hour that you are staying in a subway is so miserable. Of course, people have so many ways to, enrich the time that you stay in that cabinet. But the thing is that you can spend less time when commuting. It is just I think, wonderful thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, and this just makes sense. Less stress. Forget about the time, whether your commute is 15 minutes or an hour and a half. But if you know mentally that you don't have to deal with that every morning, like I said, subways can be extremely crowded. And even 2 minutes late out the door in the morning
exactly
can make a huge difference in your stress level because of your schedule. So if you don't have that in your life, then it just makes each day a little bit more pleasant.
And probably that 15-minute sleep that you can get more is something that decide you to move. Because I've actually experienced, because one of my friends actually did it, only for they can, sleep a little bit longer for like every day.
Well, sometimes it's not even about how long time I have to rest or how long personal time I have. It's just the mentality, the energy that you bear on the way of commuting that can really affect your whole day's vibe. Sometimes you just wear that energy flow of a total uncertainty. Well, am I going to be in that queue? In order to avoid that queue, I need to avoid it here, and I need to speed it up here. Oh, why are you in my way? Get out of my way. You remember that feeling when you have to commute for a long time? That's what I really hate about my subway rides previously, when it was over an hour long. And imagine having to wear all that and bring it to the work and feeling, oh my gosh, every day landing at work feels like a war that I have to fight. And then begin your day of working. So yeah, it really changes everything if commuting becomes higher, efficient, and also made more easier for people.
I used to work, this is in a different city, I used to work downtown until about 7:30 p.m. But I lived in the province outside of the city. So it was like With no traffic, maybe a 50-minute bus ride. With traffic, maybe about an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh.
So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday was okay. But Friday night was always the worst because the lineups for the bus would be insane.
Yep.
So here's the strategy I employed, but it wasn't only me, other people. What you would do is you would take the bus in the opposite direction for about 3 stops so that you could get on the bus earlier than the major downtown spot. So this is what I would do on Friday night. I would go in the opposite direction from my house for 3 stops just to hope that I could get a seat on the bus. Because I don't know if you've ever stood on a bus, not seated, stood up on a bus for an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh.
It's very unpleasant. It's very, very unpleasant. So that's why, having a nice short commute makes such a big difference. Also, I would say local economies as well within neighborhoods, because if you're spending less time traveling, it means you're spending more time in your community. It also means if it's convenient for you to get to your workplace, you're willing to live a little bit further away, you're going to spend your money where you live there too.
That is kind of when travel becomes easier, people gain more flexibility on no matter where you live or what you're going to buy, or even just the mentality or the mood that you're having. Maybe you can buy more. That is perspective I haven't had, but actually that is happening, and they connect economic activity by having a more flexible commuting system, and better commuting can increase business interaction, support retail and service industries around the transport hubs, and also improve productivity through more reliable travel and encourage development across neighboring cities rather than concentrating everything in just one core area.
It sounds like we are headed in the right direction, making it more and more convenient for people to get to where they work with shorter and shorter times.